3 men were thrown out of a window, and it started a war that killed millions. And the craziest part, the men survived the fall. We're diving into one of the wildest moments in European history, the Defenestrations of Prague. Not one, not two, multiple times people in this city solved political problems by literally throwing their enemies out of windows. But the most famous one, in 1618, didn't just cause chaos in one city, it sparked the 30 Years' War, one of the deadliest conflicts Europe had ever seen. By the end of this story, you'll see how one angry meeting inside a castle turned into a disaster that changed the map of Europe forever. To understand how things got so out of control, we need to go back to early 1600s Prague. At the time, Prague was part of the Holy Roman Empire. Despite the name, it wasn't just Rome, and it wasn't really one single country. It was a large group of lands across Central Europe, ruled by an emperor from the powerful Habsburg family. The Habsburgs were strict Catholics, but in the region of Bohemia, which is today part of the Czech Republic, many nobles and citizens were Protestant. And that right there was the ticking time bomb. A few years before 1618, the emperor had signed a document called the Letter of Majesty. It gave Protestants in Bohemia the right to practice their religion freely. That was a big deal. Religious freedom wasn't normal at the time. Europe had been tearing itself apart since the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. Catholics and Protestants didn't just disagree, they saw each other as dangerous. So when Ferdinand II, a deeply Catholic ruler, became king of Bohemia, Protestants got nervous. Ferdinand wasn't shy about his beliefs. He believed strongly that his lands should return fully to Catholic control. And soon after taking power, Protestant leaders started noticing things that worried them. Two Catholic officials, Jaroslav Borzita of Martinitz and Vilém Slavata of Chlum, were accused of shutting down Protestant churches. Protestants believed their rights were being stripped away. To them, this wasn't just politics, this was about survival. So they decided to confront the emperor's representatives directly. On May 23, 1618, a group of angry Protestant nobles marched into Prague Castle. They found the two Catholic governors and began arguing. Voices were raised. Accusations flew. The Protestants accused the governors of breaking the Letter of Majesty. The governors denied everything. They said they were following orders. Now here's where things snapped. The Protestant nobles grabbed the two governors. They dragged them across the room toward a large window. This wasn't a small window either. It was about 70 feet above the ground. And then, they pushed them out. The governor's secretary, Philip Fabricius, was also thrown out right after them. 3 men, 70 feet, straight down. If you're thinking that's the end of them, you'd be wrong. Somehow, all 3 survived. The Catholics later claimed angels saved them. The Protestants said they landed in a pile of manure. Historians today believe there was a sloped ditch and soft ground below that broke the fall. Either way, the message was clear. This wasn't just an angry outburst. This was open rebellion. News spread fast. The Protestants in Bohemia formed their own government and rejected Ferdinand II as their king. They even offered the crown to a new Protestant ruler, Frederick V of the Palatinate. And just like that, what started as a shove out a window turned into a full political revolt. Ferdinand II didn't take this lightly. He had powerful Catholic allies across Europe. Spain backed him. The Catholic League, led by Bavaria, backed him. This was no longer just Bohemia's problem. Within 2 years, full-scale war broke out. This conflict would become known as the 30 Years' War. At first, it was mostly about religion, Catholics versus Protestants. But like most wars, it quickly became about power, land, and control. Countries like Sweden, France, and Denmark got involved. And here's the twist. Even Catholic France eventually fought against the Catholic Habsburgs. Why? Because they feared Habsburg power more than they cared about religion. The war spread across Central Europe like wildfire. Armies marched through towns, burning villages, taking food, spreading disease. This wasn't clean battlefield fighting. Soldiers often lived off the land, which meant stealing from civilians. Entire regions were destroyed. Germany was hit especially hard. Some areas lost up to 20 to 40% of their population. Think about that. Nearly half the people gone, from war, famine, or disease. Historians estimate that between 4 and 8 million people died during the 30 Years' War. For the 1600s, that was catastrophic. And remember, it all traces back to that moment in Prague Castle. But here's something even more interesting. This wasn't the first time Prague had solved problems with windows. Back in 1419, nearly 200 years earlier, there was another defenestration in Prague. That one happened after the execution of a religious reformer named Jan Hus. His followers were furious at the Catholic Church. During a heated moment, a mob stormed the town hall and threw several Catholic city council members out of a window. That act sparked the Hussite Wars. So Prague already had a history of turning windows into political weapons. But the 1618 defenestration was different. It didn't just start a local revolt. It triggered one of the longest and most destructive wars in European history. The war dragged on for 3 decades. Generations grew up knowing nothing but conflict. Crops failed, trade collapsed, disease spread through weakened populations, entire towns disappeared. Finally, in 1648, the war ended with a series of agreements known as the Peace of Westphalia. These treaties did something huge. They changed how Europe worked. Before this, emperors and popes often claimed authority over large areas, regardless of local rulers. But the Peace of Westphalia said something new. Each state had the right to control its own land and religion. It laid the groundwork for the modern idea of national sovereignty, the idea that countries rule themselves without outside interference. In many ways, modern Europe was born out of the ashes of this war, all from one act of rage inside a castle room, and 3 unlucky men being thrown out the window.